Espresso generously gives us hot coffee every Wednesday morning, especially valuable this morning. Inside our offices hosts us. They've got a co-working space upstairs. And Lawrencehits.com provides our media sponsorship. So if you miss a program, feel free to go to their website and see the recording from past presenters. A couple of housekeeping matters. If you need Wi-Fi, we do have access. It's CyberNet. The user is the word million, and the password is the word cups, all lowercase. We encourage you to use social media, and feel free to tweet about your experience and kind of build some buzz for our speaker companies. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Suresh from Yantra Payments. This is a really interesting and exciting new startup here in Lawrence, and we're excited to have it this morning. Thank you.
I noticed you stopped. You thought of the last time you stopped. It was too complicated. So this talk really said when we talk about the meaning of Yantra, let's start with that. As a kid, I had to learn Sanskrit, which some of you may know. Along with that, and some of the mother languages are probably the languages. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is 5,000 years ago, Yantra is mentioned. It means a machine. So I was very fascinated that they had a word for machine 4,500 years before the Industrial Revolution. It's probably happened before that. So that's where they chose the name Yantra. So, he gave me about 10 minutes, I guess, or less to talk about Yantra and its origins. So, the way we came up with this was many years ago, even before Google and at Google, it was very clear that the nature of money is changing. Money is one of the most important inventions of human beings. It's essentially two human beings agreeing to give a claim to value to somebody else, which can be cash rather than human. You can't do it with dogs or cats. They won't respect that, right? It's not. So it's the only species that has a claim to value that you can exchange among each other. And it could have been pebbles, it could have been whatever, right? But once it became denominated into currency, whether it's gold or copper or whatever, it had some common standard. But money, when combined with time, caused unusual effects, very interesting things. First thing, one of the most useful things about money from my point is it prevented the strongest guy. If the really strongest guy in the village became really poor, he would probably kill the guy with the money. He had to get food, right? So money also allowed you to divide value among people across time. So farmer had harvest, he could sell it, hold the money and use it across the time. So money was a great way for human beings to live in a society where they could allocate specialization in skills and yet have value kind of divided up amongst them. Right? So from there on, but then the way what you call money and what you call a claim to value morphed from copper, gold, and somewhere along the line, when some people figured out how to make more money than the others, the state had to step in. Who was ruling had to step in and say, no, usually the initial banks were the temples. In the Moneta, or the Greek temples in India, in South India, the temples where you can still see writings about who donated how much money and who borrowed how much money. So 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, the temples, religious institutions were banks because you trusted in some unknown being to hold your money. Or priest who was the middleman for that. So from there on, money has now finally coming to a point where it became paper. When it became paper, we all trust the signature of the Secretary of Treasury or the Chairman of the Fed to honor the claim to when you read your currency, it says, I hereby agree to pay this much money. That's what it says, right? And then they force everybody to accept that as a currency. But when it became digital, right? Money generally has three basic features from my point of view, right? It's a store of value, it's a count of value, it's a medium of exchange. So when it becomes digital, it is nothing more than a bunch of bits in the database in the bank. That's it, right? And somehow you take a piece of plastic and you swipe it somewhere, people honor it. So when the whole thing goes digital, which is what's happening in the last 15 years, it's clear that you needed new things to be done with money. You have context, you have conditionality to the way money moves. So, and you kind of start working on that. I first acquired a bank in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. That's a separately interesting experience to talk about. But once you are in the bank, and once you start working all the various jobs in the bank, you find that the plumbing that is in banking today is not what we need to do digital transactions. It is not ready for that. Because that plumbing was built across last 50 years, from the initial wave of computerization and congressional laws passed at various times for consumer protection. So nothing works, nothing is standardized, nothing works for these. Meanwhile, banks got de-skilled. So I hope there's anybody in banking here? What do you do at a bank?
Retail.
Okay. So, with no disrespect to anybody, but most bank managers' skill set is buying your statements to get your loan business. Everything else is run by some other third-party technology company gives them the system. So, when we took over the bank, I felt like I was an unbranded franchisee of some unknown technology provider to banking. If I was a branded franchisee like McDonald's, at least, branding, right? So, from there started the quest for what's broken, how do we fix it? We first went to all these vendors and said, why did you fix it? This is how it should be fixed. They said, no. Because most of these technology companies, about 5 of them that provide service to banking, they are bigger than 95% of all banks. So if you're bigger than 95% of banks, you tell them it's too lost. I'm not going to make any changes, right? And then the people who are down the line tend to be guys who can buy you a steak lunch and they don't know anything else. They know how to shake your hand, smile at you, and take you out to get your business. That's it, right? So that's when Yantra was born. We said, now we're going to build all these things. My initial thing was, I don't want to take on too much. Now they said, we're going to build this. So we raised, unusual, sitting in Topeka, we raised $8 million before the company was started. Now that took some effort from Silicon Valley, so I was very careful. I said, I'm only going to pitch a few VCs and that's it. And I only want one VC, one investor. I'm going to give up only one board seat. So it took me about 4 or 5 months. I got my term sheet in, I think, 3 months. Then I took another 3 months to decide. And we finally took the money and started in August 2012. August or September 2012. So we started from there. The goal was to rebuild the plumbing, which means you want to rebuild all the ways you could put money into a bank account and all the ways you could take money out. Which means the ways you put money in is cash, card, check, ACH, wires. And you take the money out the same ways. And then we needed to embed compliance everywhere. We need to make sure that compliance is when you have virtual goods and money, compliance is the way the government makes sure that there's trust in banking. I mean, for example, if you refresh your browser and you get an error, you don't care, right? But if that site happens to be your online banking site with your balance, you're not going to sleep that night. Right? So banking is one of the few industries where, outside of military, I think, everything has to work 100% of the time. Otherwise, people are going to panic. Panic causes the economy to collapse. Right? So we had to embed compliance, and tech and compliance, and consumer protection, in every aspect. So we started the process of building out the plumbing in August. It was quite a problem to recruit people. So I ended up recruiting absolutely no experience PhDs with no knowledge of the domain. So I built my own training program to train them. We rethought how the architecture for banking should be. So we have new plumbing that should go out live shortly called One Card. That will change the way you think about a bank account. Hopefully it will pay your bills and let you know when the bill is above or beyond a certain level. It will allow you to give cards with conditions on them to your kids or somebody else where they can only spend it at certain times. So it's going to be very interesting when that comes out. It's not far from getting launched. And as we were doing this, we realized, one of the things that many of you would recognize, when you have a really fast car, the most important thing is good brakes. Otherwise, that's only you're going to drive only once and highway, right? So we had to come up with a way to, let's say, find out what's happening at any given point in a millisecond, to understand across billions of transactions. How do we know in a millisecond what is the standard deviation, what is the average, what is your essentially the pattern of your behavior in statistical models in a millisecond? How do we compute that? While also understanding horizontally who else is doing what and how does what you're doing compare to that. For example, you normally spend $500 and today this transaction spent $3,500. Either I could do a rule, which means I'll be writing rules forever and the system will not scale, or I should be able to instantly know that you are 2 standard deviations away from your normal behavior, but you are within 1 standard deviation of everybody else doing a transaction today. That place, right? So we have to, I don't know how many of you are in the computer programming field here. So we had to dive into data structures. We had to think about how do we design a data structure for banking, where in real time we could compute statistics across billions of transactions within a millisecond and still have a risk score of that transaction being a fraud or money laundering or whatever. We also had to be able to propagate risk across the entire system instantly. For example, we swipe a card, it's art gallery, somebody's swiping all the card numbers here. The minute we find out, we should be able to propagate that across every transaction that ever happened. So I got lucky. It turns out I had worked on a PhD that I didn't finish in hypertext theory on a node link traversal engine, which is today known as a search engine, which 2 guys called Sergey and Larry worked on 5 years after I did, because when I was working on, there was no browser called Mosaic. So they built Google based on hypertext theory. So I said, why don't I go back and actually use what I kind of had to spend time on many years ago. So we applied hypertext theory and built a transactional pattern engine for banking that allows us to find anything in real time. That thing is quite fun to work with. So that is what, if you Google, you'll find it's got amazing reviews from some of the industry analysts, because it doesn't matter how much data you have. We have achieved what's called a time complexity of 1, which means no matter how much data we have, we'll still find it in a millisecond. And that one's getting rolled out as we speak. So that's kind of where we are. We're still not gone out to the market. We have lots of customers coming to us. We'll be keeping the hotel rooms busy in both Peter and Lawrence this month. We have visitors coming to see us all the time. So it kind of got to a point where I don't want to travel. I tell them, please come here. Because it's just too much to go out and spend time. So our customers are all banks all over the world. We have banks in Latin America that are waiting to go on board on our risk management system. We built our global remittance solution, which is live. Jason, I think he's here. He's also managing that. I think we'll be announcing in a few weeks that we can go real time into India. It's one bank where you can click money from our account and it will be there in the other account within a minute. We've announced a partnership with Ripple to use a protocol to send money across the globe. That'll take some time. And our one card platform should come out any day now. It's kind of live in pre-production. It should go out to the customers any day, depending on when all certifications are done. So, but to get to here in about 2 years, 2.5 years, in Kansas, oh my God. It was not fun. I mean, we went through all kinds of trials and tribulations. We set up an office. And it's very funny. We were looking for people banking domain, and guess where you would find them? Bangalore, India, and Chennai, India. Why? Because every major bank in the world has outsourced their banking operations to India, and specifically to Chennai and Bangalore. I happened to be born in Bangalore and happened to study in Chennai. Talk about dumb luck, right? So, and they're all there. And they all started with the call center or some basic work, and suddenly all the deep domain is sitting there, not in Kansas. If you want somebody who understands deep payments, you're not going to find them in Kansas or even Silicon Valley. You're going to find them in Bangalore or Chennai. So, and we went and we found the wages there were higher than Kansas for some of the good guys. So we set up an office, didn't work out. We redid here, and now we're using some people back there. So it's one of those things where, if you want to find good tomatoes, you got to go to the market. You can't go to a farm. So otherwise, you'll be going to 100 farms. So that's kind of, is that good enough time for you?
Sure. If you have other stuff you want to talk about, otherwise we can kind of transition to.
I can talk about lots of things. We can go on. But that's kind of where we are today. We've also launched from the bank side. Anybody use Simple? Heard of Simple? Bank Simple? Mobile. We launched Apple Pay before Apple. 2 years before Apple did it, we launched Apple Pay, where you can tap and get a receipt on the phone. We've launched a gift card through the bank, where you can give a gift to your baby or a kid that can be used for college savings. We launched texting your money to Mexico that failed miserably because people who want to send money didn't want to identify themselves. This doesn't work in banking. So we've done a bunch. We have another. We sponsor another product with the bank where you can pay utility bills in most of Latin America. So a whole bunch of solutions have been launched on the bank side. And that was quite a challenge as well because we did not move out of beer. We decided that we will train the people in beer camps. So about 600 people in beer and hiring people there is a challenge as well. So, but we trained the existing staff in beer camps, which is truly in the middle of, you can't find it by accident. There's no highway going through the place. So you can't even drive by accident. And we managed to create a bank that has fantastic settlement out of a place in Kansas that nobody would expect us to do that. I used to get stopped by the cops. The 3 cops stopped me the first 3 times, but I'm okay now. They don't stop me anymore. So, no, they just want to get to know. So I made sure they all had bank accounts, so they let me alone. But it's one of those things. It's been a fascinating experience to do this the last 5 years and the last 2.5 years with Yantra. So now we are at a phase where we'll be onboarding customers this year. That's why we have an office in Lawrence because we need a lot more interns. We have people we can train into the skill set because we decided that if we're going to operate in Kansas, we're not going to find people who already know what we want them to know. So we have to train them into what. So we're basically picking college kids who have no clue what they want to do in life and help them do something here. I'll take
questions. So for questions, it's good to ask questions. I guess, so it sounds like you're trying to kind of reinvent banking with different product lines. And is it correct to say that the 2 biggest are the pattern matching and instant bank transfers?
The way to think about it is, I think of banking, everything as ways to put money into an account and ways to take money out of an account. Then adding a context and conditionality to it, right? So, ways to take money out of accounts and into another country is one application of the same platform. We also, by the way, I forgot, we also launched real-time payments last year. That's an important thing. We can send money to any bank account instantly, even on a Sunday evening. And that took 1.5 years through the bank to work with various networks to make that happen. And we found some very curious applications. We found one of the biggest check cashers in the country is my customer at the bank. It turns out people who have a bank account in Bank of America or Wells Fargo, when they get a check on Friday afternoon and they want the money, they deposit into the bank, they don't get access to it until Tuesday.
That's correct.
So they take it to the check casher who cashes it. Then you swipe a debit card on Bank of America debit card on the check casher's whatever the swipe terminal, and through our bank, we put the money to Bank of America instead. And we make a fee. Right? So that's we have other use cases where we have some very large companies, including insurance companies, using our real-time payments as well. So you hear a lot about Dwala and those guys. They're not real-time payments. They just keep using the word. We've been doing this for a year now, and it was very painful to set it up. So that's done as well. That's also settling out of where Kansas and Topeka. So we basically, right.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, it looks like it's, you're taking on a role that really big banks do not want to take. Is that fair?
It's not big banks don't want to take. What happens is, out of the, I don't know how many banks there were, 7,000 or 8,000 4 or 5 years ago, it's maybe a little smaller with consolidation. When even we're going to get like that someday. When you create processes and compliance, right? I've faced 5 exams from FDIC and the other regulators. You get a guy from Springfield, Missouri, who doesn't care about you, who sends you a 500 plus questions, questionnaire to you, 30 days which you have to answer in writing under the penalty of perjury. Going to jail, criminal penalty, that you have to answer these detailed questions on IT. Then you have another 500 questions on compliance, another 500 on loans. Right? If you're a banker, once you write those answers, the next year you want to just copy paste the same thing. You don't want to add anything new. You understand? You're not crazy like me to sit up all night and rewrite everything for every new product. So change is not good for it. Change is a lot of work. It takes away from their coffee time in a coffee shop or a lunch time. Right? Or a vacation time. I have no vacations. So that's why it's just, and then when you do it by committee, if those 500 questions have to be reviewed by 5 people in a big bank, it's not going to happen. That's why it's tough for them to make any changes.
So you would see yourself almost like an upstart then for...
No, crazy. It's more like...
So I'm probably not even smart enough to ask this question, but I'm going to try.
That's always a very dangerous way to start a question.
It seems like the blockchain is a system that is fairly well outside of the current banking regulatory system, and it's kind of a different way of looking at currency as a store of value or a medium of exchange. And you mentioned a partnership coming up with Ripple, and I'm wondering if that was integrated in any way with the blockchain.
I can talk a lot of length on blockchain here. Look, end of the day, there are 3 layers to all these protocols, right? There is a gossip protocol underlying, and then there is a blockchain process, and above that you have all these applications. We look at Ripple simply because Ripple offered to bring to us liquidity providers. This was too much headache for me to open bank accounts for 300 or 200 countries and keep a balance, and with one of them, they were going to provide liquidity. So that's why we said we'll work with Ripple. As opposed to the blockchain, what he's referring to is essentially the currency note you have in your wallet is a pointer to money somewhere else, or is a claim to the value. Whereas in a digital currency, where Bitcoin accidentally became a digital currency, it itself is value, carries the value. You can transport it through a wallet, right? The problem with those, in my view, is they're not backed by a sovereign government. And people say that's good. No, that's not good. One of the main purposes of banking, there are 3 purposes of banking, or 3 from my point of view. One is liquidity, other one is payments, third one is monetary policy. Right? Liquidity is when, in a small town like we are, for example, we make loans as low as $300. When a guy comes in and says, my only asset is this lawnmower, I need $300 today. If we don't make the loan, what do you think he's going to do? Huh? He may do something else stupid too, right? He may take somebody else's whatever, right? So, providing liquidity in a small is one of the most important functions of a bank, right? Payments, which you all take for granted. Wherever you go, you swipe, somehow the merchant gives you goods and you assume they got paid somehow. That's all technology and compliance. That's the role that most banks gave up when they gave up technology. Right? But there's a third role banking plays, which is why today oil is cheap, and this is why Chinese goods are cheap, is monetary policy. Right? So where the government is able to create policy like, economies, for example, let's do this. A farmer makes a lot of money, he decides he's going to buy every house next to him in the village. He's got so much more money than him. He would just buy these two houses at a big price. Everybody else assumes their houses went up too. You have inflation now. The poorest guy can't afford a house anymore. We all know this problem, right? So that's when the government says, I'm going to increase the cost of borrowing. Or I'm going to reduce the cost of borrowing for this section of the public, right? So the monetary policy is something you cannot do with a blockchain currency. And that is what keeps most economies going, because there is so much inequity across time in the way money moves in a society. If you don't have monetary policy imposed through currency, you'll have serious problems. Even with that, we have problems in this country. That answers the question?
Yes.
So if you're doing real-time transactions, what are y'all doing to combat fraud and loss?
That's why I built this cool system to do that.
Well, so does every bank need to work with your system? How are you able
I
to
hope
tell-
so. They pay me money and use my system. That's the goal.
How are you able to tell if the accounts that are being used are appropriate accounts, if these people are actually
We do all kinds of
not
crazy things.
fraudsters?
If we take your phone number, we can find out how long you had the phone. We know a lot of stuff. We have databases that we can go find so much about. And if you give us permission, we can even find out where you're standing right now. We don't need an app. We just need your phone number. That's not scary. Everybody knows that. Uncle Sam knows where you are with your phone number already.
Yep.
Plus the challenges.
It's always common cases.
The challenge deposits too. I mean, that's
Yeah, a lot of ways.
Why did you buy a bank in the middle of nowhere, Kansas? Did you look at other? Why didn't you stay in like nowhere, California, or nowhere, North Dakota? Was there a reason you came to Kansas?
No, I already moved to Kansas because my wife ended up with a job in security benefit, and she took that job because they had a daycare center there. She moved, and I was living in Half Moon Bay on the beach. I moved for the scenery. But what happened was, I was looking for a bank starting from 2005, I think. So we looked all over. Historically, it turns out there are a few states that have lots of small banks. One of them is Kansas, the other one is Oklahoma, Nebraska, or Iowa, maybe Missouri. This historical, I don't want to go into I know the reasons, but it's not the time to do it. And I became friends with one of the banking turnaround guys who's turned around a couple hundred banks sitting in Kansas, all over these states. So we would chat every few months saying, is this a good time? So we kept looking at banks. And the economy heated up, 05, 06, 07. 08, it was starting to tank. And then he called me one day, I was in Singapore, he called me and said, there is a bank you need to buy that I'm turning around. I think it's clean enough that you may want to look at buying. I said, Alan, I'll sign the term sheet. He said, it's a half-page term sheet. I signed it from Singapore. I didn't see the bank. I had only one condition, that he will be on the board after we buy the bank. After I signed the term sheet, I came and went and looked at it. Then, of course, it took us a year and a half after that to close on the deal with regulatory approvals. So, it was not like we said, that's exactly where we wanted. It just happened to be that.
You talk about some of the challenges that you feel like you're facing.
Of people, right? The biggest challenge for us is, this is very similar to 1999, when it was very difficult to find good people. By 2002, it was easy to find them because the economy about the tank was tanking, right? So people is a challenge. I think we have crossed the technology challenges. We have plenty of funding. We have plenty of money being thrown at us. And now we had an article in the New York Times, so we have all kinds of people calling us and offering us money, even though we are in Topeka, Kansas, right? Why is that fun? Every place, what do you make of it? Seriously. I know guys in Silicon Valley who've been there for 25 years, my classmates, who've not made it into a Facebook or a Google or Oracle. Still haven't made it into any one of those companies. So end of the day, what do you make of every place? So the challenge is not money, challenge is people. For us, for example, we have now more than 30 banks around the world wanting to use a risk management system. And I'm trying to figure out how the hell are we going to execute that. Right? Our one card system, we already have banks saying how do we implement across many banks in the US. Our challenge is what model do we pursue and how do you install this thing in 1,000 banks in a year? You can't. So we have these kind of challenges that are really scaling challenges that we have not yet fully resolved on distribution models. How are we going to do that? We don't, as of today, I don't know exactly how we're going to do it. Right. So.
Are you planning on directly policy? Are you doing anything with young people communicating?
We did. We launched 2 years ago. We had an NFC-based tap and pay. It's called Moven. Just look it up. Yeah, it's free. You can download it, start opening an account, start using it. It's also available on a smartwatch now.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you raised $8 million before you opened your business?
No, I've raised money before. I've always been lucky. But then I never raise money unless I'm absolutely sure of what I'm going to do. I did not write a business plan, so you guys know. All I had was a PowerPoint of 10 slides, maybe 12, I think 10. But what I had done was we had bought a bank and turned it around. And I laid out, and I carefully picked the VCs I wanted to talk to. And I laid out saying, this is what I'm going to do. I said, I can't give any financial projections. Don't do this again. I said, no financial projections at this point because I have no idea how to play it. But this is the major disruption in fintech. This is where we need to be. And these are the things I'm going to build. And this is the amount of money I need.
Do you have some of the technology systems already built?
Nothing. But I had a previous track.
So I'm guessing that you look at that as a constantly evolving process. So now you've developed some systems in fintech and you're starting to implement them. Is there a process that you use to recognize the next set of opportunities? Well, there are a couple of ways to think about things, right? You look at everything as is it scalable, replicable, and sustainable. Right? You got to have at least those three things have to be checked off, otherwise you don't go near it. Secondly, I'm a very core plumbing guy, meaning any industry I look at, I have to understand the plumbing at the core level. To me, disruption is always in the plumbing. It's like some of the fintech startups, they're painting fake windows on outside walls. I need to own the building and the plumbing and redo everything from basement up. I can always paint a window later or even make a new window when I want to, right? So once we've laid out the foundation, we're suddenly finding new opportunities we did not even know existed. So our challenge now is all this new stuff that's coming at us that we didn't expect. Like the risk management. We just said, oh, I got to build one because I got to sleep at night. But then I said, if you're going to build one, I have to solve the response time of millisecond problem. Or then I have to solve this 100 billion transactions, still find it in a millisecond. You solve that. You create a pattern engine. You look around, oh, we can use it in healthcare now. We can use it in any industry that has data. Oh, and every industry has data. Every industry has transactional data. Okay, every industry wants to see the data instantly. Oh, okay. So yesterday, I've been up last night, this morning, talking to engineers we found another problem, right? How do we take 20 million transactions and upload to our system? What transaction per second speed do we need? And how do we create a front end that can handle that? Well, we solved that. We have another core competency we've developed. So that's how I think. It's a little crazy, but it's also a little hard to go out and solve foundational problems. Because a lot of the application is core sciences, so it's using physics, using chemistry, using math. Right? That's where, if you go to foundational level, you have to use all those basic sciences.
Do you have bandwidth challenges in Lawrence with the internet?
I have no idea. I'd ask Jason.
Most of our transactional stuff is handled through our data center and all that stuff. So our office is here to
I have no idea. Even if there's one, don't bring it up. The other people can.
So you mentioned that the success from your capital raising was based in part on your past track record. Can you talk a little bit about your past ventures?
Okay, sure. I didn't recognize the importance of hypertext when I was in college, so I thought wireless may be the way to go. So I saw a pager one day, alphanumeric. Any of you old enough to remember alphanumeric pagers? So I saw an alpha page. Oh my God, this thing is such a waste of bandwidth. Because to send a message to one pager, they would send it to a satellite and send it to 1,000 transmitters across the country, all of which would carry the same message, not knowing where the pager is. So I could use this to send broadcast messages like TV to one-to-many. Then I said, fax broadcasting was a multi-billion-dollar industry in that time. So I said I could disrupt fax broadcasting by taking 7-bit data and making it 8-bit and sending that. So I built a narrowband protocol where it's like throwing a ball, you don't know if you caught it, but you keep throwing all the balls and you have to arrange it on the other side, but you don't know if you caught all the balls. So we built a protocol to do that. We got everybody from Dun & Bradstreet, Motorola. I cold called myself because there was no email then. So we got all the major guys to do that. I actually built the box. In those days I could design hardware, firmware, write code. I'm completely de-skilled. I can't do any coding right now. Right? So we did that and found that there was nobody's willing to pay to put the box in next to every fax machine. So we made it data ready. Still didn't go anywhere. Then I found out that the law enforcement liked our monitoring tools. So we sold to the 3-letter agencies, we sold our monitoring tools those days and made some money. But then I ran into a guy who said, look, we need to put this TV programming on TV, but Starsight had a pattern for the vertical blanking interval. The channel keeps rotating with all the TV thing. We need another way to get this data. I said, we could use mine. So we built the first set-top box with a TV guide button. So every time you use a TV guide button, I have the first one in my house. So you could actually pop up the TV guide. The menu is still the same, still not changed. The way the menu is, that is the same menu from 1994. So I sold that, licensed it, sold it, and then sold the rest of the company to another guy who said, who had a company that was sending messages to pages, but he thought he could do wireless email with my technology. He went and raised $60 million, by the way, in 96 or 95. That's a lot of money. And he blew everything in 2 years. But he won every known award those days because we had this cool app. Now you call it an app, but the application on a Windows PC that you could send email to anybody or receive email, and you could see all these stock codes and everything. And then this software called Pointcast, anybody remember Pointcast? Came and destroyed it in a month. But I was half smart because I took half my money in cash. But that was the first set of products when I was a student, grad student. And then the next was I started a services company, grew to about 600 people, and I built an XML server, built content management, but I wasn't smart enough to monetize that. So I sold my stake in the company and took some time off, went to Half Moon Bay, California. And then I got pulled back to Topeka.
Going back to the Yantra and more of the data processing, you're talking about how you take all this data and get those results, and how every industry has data. The correlation that I'm kind of seeing here is, what's the other entity that we learned of in the past year or two that has a massive amount of data, and that's the CIA's collection program of, all world's data. And do you see the similarities or maybe an interest from them?
No, this is different. It's different because they have, in fact, Virginia, around Washington, D.C. has a very huge collection of data visualization companies and what they call, data linking technologies. Right. It's very advanced. That's based on the old data warehousing, data cubing models. We don't do that. Our expertise is speed. We want to be able to give you an answer like it does. As you hit, like Google does, you hit enter, it should have an answer. When the API hits, it should have a response. Those guys can take time to visualize multiple linkages. So can we, but we're more focused on speed. At this stage in our business, I really don't want to deal with a three-letter agency of any kind, although our bank is the trustee bank for the Department of Energy. We just got a call from USA to help them with remittance globally. I've done that before. They're very good paymasters, but it takes a while. We don't have the time to do that right now. So, any questions?
Well, as we're coming to are there any more questions today? Or if not, it's time for a classic question that ends the session, which is, what can we do to help you?
Give me all your best engineers. Yeah, that's all there is. That's all we need at this point.
And actually, as a follow-up to that, how much of it would you say is, obviously there's a huge technical core to this,
Yeah.
right? But I'm assuming there's probably a marketing / soft skills core somewhere out there, at least on top. Would you?
Oh, in terms of how we sell?
Yeah.
We don't sell. Seriously, ask Jason any other. We don't sell at all. Our goal is to build the best possible product, and somehow people find out about it. Or the bank, so far, last 5 years, they've grown it only through word of mouth. Only through word of mouth. There's not. You go to the website, there is not even a mention of what products we offer. Right? And I have a pipeline that I can't even fulfill this year. Same thing with. What is
So I'd say the soft skills for us would probably be like the CSRS, not on the marketing.
So that's a service side of the business we have to provide. But from a selling side, we do not sell at all. Even in Yantra, we speak at trade shows and we just have a pipeline. Because the products should speak for itself. And that's what it's doing. If the product didn't speak for itself, I would not even be comfortable talking to you guys. So the focus has been extremely on having a very good product. And it doesn't matter where you build it, which part of the world you are in. When people find out about it, they want it. Right? And they tell other people.